Hello and welcome to the Quantum Bridge with myself, Casper, with my cat, BB, who won't leave me alone, um, and with Gary, my co-host. And today, very, very pleased as ever when we have a guest, but particularly it's nice to have new guests on these days too, because we've had a lot of returning guests, which is beautiful, but it's nice to have somebody who's going to bring yet another perspective. So I'll pass over to Gary to do the intro.
Thank you, Casper. And I'm going to welcome Courtney to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing so great. Thank you so much for having me.
That's all right. You're welcome. So we'll just give a bit of background from how I met you, which was on social media. A lot of our guests come via X. It's a way of us finding people. And I believe it was initially, I can't remember who we was replying to, but I saw a post of yours where you sort of mentioned that it'd be nice to have more, I'll use the term normal or regular people rather than the sort of loud mouths. And marketing the channel as I'd like to do now and again. I said, well, that's what we do. We have regular people on with us. And via that, you got invited. So here you are, Courtney.
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity. I've been very excited for this. I especially love the opportunity that we can, kind of pass that olive branch across not only, through different people, but across different countries and expand on our different mindsets. Yeah. So it's been an incredible 3 years for me and my family. We have left large careers. We have moved states. We have opened our own food truck and our own small business. Wow. And so, a lot has changed in the world. And I think a lot of people have changed in the world, too. I think that there's a lot of us that are very different people than who we were 3 years ago. And I think the more that we all come together and speak about our experiences and try to come up with solutions to the problems that we're all facing, not just here in America or over there in the UK. But I think that when we all come together and really have these big discussions, the better. And I think that we're really grateful that, Elon has taken over Twitter, now X, to go ahead and give us a platform to be able to do so.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, we try to have an international feel to the show to show that, that there's people all around the world. We're all shifting and changing and supporting each other, really. I mean, whereabouts in America are you at the minute?
So I am from kind of all over. So I was raised right outside of Detroit, and then moved down to South Carolina, then moved up to North Carolina where I met my husband. And then we came here to a beautiful town that's very small, coming from a very large metropolitan area in the North Carolina area in Charlotte. We're now in a tiny little town in the foothills of the Great Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. Very much a lifestyle change, coming from a larger city to a small town like this, where there's, people that have, been here their entire lives, but they have welcomed us in with open arms. But when the world kind of went crazy, in 2020, my husband was a broadcaster with the NFL for 10 years. And when COVID hit, he was, very vocal about his questions and concerns about what was happening in the world. And the NFL was not happy about that. And they decided to part ways. My husband chose not to renew his contract, even though he had been there for 10 years. And he just looked at me and said, I think we should move to the mountains and open a food truck. And I had been in the commercial real estate industry, multifamily, for over 15 years and had quite a career there as well. And, we decided that I would then stay at home and raise these babies and help with the back end of the business. And we've been incredibly successful. People love our food. We're growing very fast. And so here we are 3 years later. If you would have told me that this is where I would be 3 years ago, I probably would have laughed at you. But the world has an incredible way of just putting you exactly where you're supposed to be.
We didn't think we'd be sitting here either. So it's yeah, as you say, it's strange, but it sounds like a nice story in that the last few years have been a struggle for people and their families, and a lot of falling out. So it's been nice that yourself and your husband are on that same page. You know, there wasn't that sort of argument about moving. You sort of both felt that, or at least that's what I gather from your story. There wasn't a massive row.
Yeah, it was definitely an adventure, and not one that was planned.
We were just going to ask you, Courtney, what type of food is it that you're doing?
So my husband is actually a Mexican immigrant. He moved here when he was 14. So we do authentic Mexican cuisine, but because I do all of like the graphic design and social media, all of our collateral. And so when I asked him, I was like, okay, well, what do you want your theme of your truck to be? He said, I want it to be Americana themed, Patriot themed. And I said, so you want me to design you a Mexican themed, American themed Mexican food truck? And he said, yes. So we have named the truck Good Hombres. And our slogan is God, Family, Country, Tacos. So, and his food is incredible. On top of being with the NFL for 10 years, he's also been in food and bev for 30. So he started off as a dishwasher when, he first got to this country. And he worked his way up to high-end food and bev. He was, very high scale, like steakhouses and things like that in Uptown Charlotte. So, because obviously the Panthers stuff was just full time because he was the broadcaster for the Carolina Panthers. And it was quite a to-do when he left, right? So, like, we were in the newspapers. He was being called a QAnon. He was, Newsweek did a spotlight on him leaving the Panthers over his support of President Trump and questioning COVID and all of those things. So it was definitely not the best highlight of him after a stunning career for 10 years. So when your family and your beliefs get, put on blast to the media like that, it's a difficult thing to go through. And we lost a lot of friends. We had some family members that were making it difficult to, have holidays with, especially that first year or two after COVID. So, you learn a lot of lessons. I think that, it's very easy to have friends when things are great and everything are good times. It's very difficult after, when things get tough. And we learned a lot of, who was really on our side those last couple of years.
Well, I mean, my question would be, Courtney, did he lose a lot of friends, or did he find out who his friends really were?
We found out who our friends really were and who really supported us in this venture, because quite frankly, even my parents, who we're very, very close with, I mean, when you tell your family and friends that you're going to leave very successful careers, move to the mountain and open a food truck, they absolutely think that you are have gone a little crazy, which is fair. Like, I feel like I was like, it's fair. It's a fair question. But we had some really amazing friends, especially those that had worked with my husband in food and bev for so long. They were like, listen, between my business experience in real estate and my husband's experience in food and bev, they're like, listen, if you were going to run off and open a dentist's office, we would probably question you a little bit more. But with our experience, they were like, I think that you guys can make this work. And we've been very successful and we're growing very fast. And our goal is to open a restaurant next. So we're going to see where the journey takes us.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. And of course, if we can, we'll grab an image, Gary. You've probably seen this before, but I'm new to Courtney. I'd love to be able to put images up of both the truck itself, because that sounds great, and also maybe some of the food, because you might find this hard to believe, Courtney, but I do quite like food, to say the least. And I am a fan of Mexican food. I'm learning Spanish at the moment, albeit very slowly. And I love the whole idea of what you did. I love the leap of faith. And the other thing that I think coming out of the last few years is just that people have, we were all pushed, maybe Gary might say nudged, but I would say pretty much pushed out of any comfort zones. And we've all had to adapt. And I think for many of us, and my heart goes out to those who found that incredibly difficult, or who were in a completely sort of no-win situation. But for those of us who could wriggle a little bit, we've found ourselves now in a much more interesting place. And a much more aligned position probably than we were a few years ago. So I don't know how you feel about that, but I tend to think that these things, as tough as they've been, and they have been, I don't want to belittle that, have led to these, in some cases, these wonderful new sort of divergent moves in the road.
I very much believe that, and we are a Christian family, probably not a traditional Christian family like a lot of, especially here in this region, are. I very much believe in the quantum. I very much believe that the universe and God work together in amazing ways to lead us exactly where we're supposed to be. And trusting the process is not easy. And I've had to do this before. Like I said, I've lived in 5 different states that have, and each time that I've made this transition, it's really changed who I am as a person. But and sometimes it just, you don't understand it when you're in it. But when you're looking back, something. The downsides of being outside.
Yeah.
When you're looking at, when you look at it in retrospect, in hindsight, right, it's 2020, and you're like, oh, this all happened for a reason. Like when I left South Carolina to go to Charlotte, I went for what I thought was going to be the job of my dreams, and it turned out not to be. And I was devastated. I was heartbroken. My ego was just, because I was like, oh, I'm big stuff. I've, got this amazing job. I got this huge promotion with a really respectable company. And, it didn't turn out, and I didn't know what to do. And my first initial reaction was to move back to South Carolina with my family and kind of tuck my tail between my legs. And something told me to stay. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. What is going on? Probably 4 months later, I met my husband, and it just, looking back, it just all comes together. Right. So you've got to trust the process, and in something, whether or not it's a God, it's the universe, it's something higher or bigger than you, that we are being led and we are here for a reason, as difficult as it may seem in the time. Because even throughout this journey, as grateful as I am, man, are there some days where I am just like looking around and I'm like, what the heck have we done?
Yeah. I think we've all been through that. I mean, another thing we try and show is that this transition, like you're talking about here, that, well, in some ways, from something that was very dark, if you like, or how we felt at the time, it actually has shifted a lot of us into where we're supposed to be. So there's also a good aspect to it. It's like you say, you just have to trust that the leap of faith, I guess. Sometimes you just have to go with it. I mean,
I think that 2020, and in my experience with COVID, it was very tragic. So my son is vaccine injured, and we had just gotten his formal diagnosis of autism. So my son is 6 now. Well, he'll be 6 in a couple of weeks, and he is nonverbal autistic. And we had just gotten this diagnosis, and obviously that diagnosis process is incredibly tough, right? You're going through all of these different evaluations and things like that. And then my company that I was with at the time had sold, so I was laid off. And one of my dearest friends, the week after I was laid off, one of my dearest friends had postpartum psychosis, and she had a 6-week-old, was getting ready to go back to work, and committed suicide. And it was the most unexpected thing, because she's probably one of the most balanced, healthy people that I know. So she left behind a 6-week-old and a 6-year-old at the time. And her funeral was the day that Trump announced lockdowns. So I was down in South Carolina by myself with the kids, because we didn't know how much longer Luis was going to be able to be working at that time, because he was obviously in food and bev. We, knew all of the restaurants were going to be shutting down. And so my whole world just collapsed. And I don't even know if I remember some of it. I think I was just in such a fog of what was happening. And my husband looked at me probably 3 days into lockdown and said, they're going to make this about a vaccine, and they're going to try to mandate it. He's like, I don't trust any of this. I don't trust the people that are saying this. And I thought he was crazy. And he went down the rabbit hole first and really started to do a lot of digging. And we were kind of already semi-awakened to what was happening in the world. You know, we didn't trust our government. We had already dealt with a vaccine injury, kind of awaking us to what was happening with Big Pharma. I was kind of already a crunchy mom. But the things that we started looking into just rocked my world. And I was like, and when you really start to do the digging and you understand what's happening on a bigger scale, it changes you as a person. I don't think that some of the documentaries that I've seen or some of the things that I've read, I'll ever be able to go back to being the same. But you have to trust that the world needed those of us awake, right? We can say that there are the awakened, we can say that they're the non-player characters, however it is that you want to describe us, but the world needed us to go ahead and heal and to continue us to move forward to the next whatever chapter that this crazy world is going to take us to. But we needed to know. And as difficult as it was and as hard as it was to sit there after just going through all of that pain and all of that destruction, I know that that was the Lord's way of saying, you need to know what's happening because your voice is important and you need to be heard.
Yeah, and we need some stability somewhere. I mean, I look at it in sort of waves that, you know, some sort of awaken to these truths early, and then we go through all those, whatever you want to call it, dark nights for the soul and all this sort of stuff, because you can't have everyone going through that at the same time. When we think of the chaos that we had anyway, it's kind of like you need some of us to at least have some stability for when the rest start going down those rabbit holes. You know, I mean, I know you mentioned earlier that I don't really like this whole left and right, and in your case, Democrats and Republicans, and well, but you did mention in one of your posts earlier that you came from that liberal side, I believe. I mean, is that fair to say?
Very much so. I voted, you know, and I've always been a moderate. I feel like in my whole life, I've always been able to look at both sides of things. But I voted for Obama twice, and I think that what's happening in our country, and I know that you guys are you guys are going through it over there too. What you would consider a liberal today, you know, my values and my morals never changed. They never wavered. I didn't leave the left left me. I voted for Obama twice. I lived in Uptown Charlotte in 2012, where the DNC convention was held. So I attended that. I've always been interested in politics, right? That's always been a hobby, a passion of mine. I would watch CNN every single day, you know, but I was always moderate. I was never hardcore left. I was never an activist. In 2016, I did not want Hillary Clinton. I don't understand. I really wasn't a Bernie supporter. I really wasn't enthused by anyone. After 2 terms of voting for Obama, I felt very disappointed in what I had, you know, he did not live up to my expectations. So in 2016, I voted independent. I voted for Gary Johnson. And I didn't really like Trump, but I certainly didn't dislike him. And I was kind of like, I mean, I used to watch The Apprentice. Everybody used to love Donald Trump. I'm not really sure what all the hate was about. So kind of stayed for those 4 years, just kind of in between, you know, and I did fall for some of the media propaganda that was happening around Trump during his tenure in office, and, you know, really had to shake that out of me. So when COVID hit, I was part of like a liberal Facebook moms group, right? Because I do believe in women's rights. You know, I do believe that we want to have this diversity. I am definitely still a moderate, even though after 2020, I'm now, you know, a right-wing extremist, fascist, Nazi, whatever, you know, insult that gets spewed at me. And I'm like, this is so silly. And I think that one of the things that really pushed me more towards the right in 2020 is because I started asking questions, especially surrounding COVID. And then my husband was, and I really started to then take an opportunity to listen to Trump, and instead of just the news clips that were being shown at me. And I was like, and listen, do I still think that Trump is perfect? By all means, no. And sometimes I'm just like, I just want you to shh. Like, I agree with so many of his policies, and I think that he's done some really great things and has some great intentions. I wish we could have had an opportunity to see him really do more for our country had he not been in this constant fight and struggle and battle with, Democrats and the media and himself, quite frankly. So I am still very much like frustrated with the current political status. But I really used to align more liberal. And when I started asking these questions, especially after they chose Biden as their candidate in like the June timeframe, which was the same time frame that we were dealing with all of like the BLM riots and stuff like that. So I'm questioning COVID. I'm questioning the BLM riots. I'm kind of questioning the hypocrisy. I'm questioning why Joe Biden was chosen. And I was just immediately shunned. It was, you're not allowed to ask these questions. You have to support us. You have to support us 100% or you don't support us at all. As where on the right, I was starting to kind of dabble in different niches online. And they were like, yeah, we don't agree on that, but that's cool. You can come on over and hang with us. And I was like, it just starts to make you think. So, even as someone who is still a moderate today, I like several different candidates that we have right now for president. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do on our primary. I don't know if it'll 100% matter if what I'll do in our primary right now. I think that Trump will probably go ahead and secure the nomination. But I think that it's so tiresome to hear everybody just get pigeonholed and you have to be one or you have to be the other. They want to assume that there's 25,000 genders, but yet, politics are only non-binary, it's one or the other. And it's silly to me because I have opinions that are on the left. I have opinions that are on the right. I have opinions that are in the middle. And I think that most people are like me, quite frankly, but we've been so scared to speak out. And, because everybody's just going to attack it. It feels like you're going to get attacked from either side when you're really coming from a moderate place. And I find that we're finally in a place that moderates are finally speaking out, and it's refreshing.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've seen that in some ways. Again, part of the process seems to be breaking down, even if we're not there yet, but these labels of left and right, and you've got people like us that just say, look, I'm just me, and I have these opinions, and I don't want these labels, I don't want to be called left, I don't want to be called right, it's they're all just tools of division, really. So that's how I sort of see that. It's again, we need to sort of break. They're just made up things, really. Just like I say, if they've got us fighting each other, our eyes, and our minds are distracted. We're just bickering between ourselves, and it just ends up one big mess.
And when you look at it from a bigger picture, it's got to be by design, right? Like when I really try to break it down, and I'm an operations person by nature. That's what I did in my career. I went to troubled properties and would fix them and find all the things that were wrong. And so when I'm looking at the world operational process, I'm like, I can't figure it out. It's got to be by design because they have found every way to go ahead and divide us as humanly possible. And when you really start to look at the bigger picture and kind of peel back those layers, it's a puzzle. And it's frightening to how we got here and how we've allowed them to really control this push towards division for so long now. And I think that it's been happening for so much longer than any of us ever realized. And when you look back, you're like, oh, gosh. And that's really scary because we were so distracted with everything, with social media, with TV, with sports, with news, with this, with that. We never had an opportunity to step back until COVID and really take a look around and be like, wow, this is what's really happening, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it's when you discover that is cradle to grave, but probably for 1,000 generations before us. So, what were we? Was there this time, whether it was Atlantean or whatever it might be, but were there these great sort of golden eras that came along, maybe lasted a long time, but then got wiped away, and then maybe actually so cataclysmic that our sort of unified psyche was damaged so much that we can't even bring it to the forefront of our minds as to what happened. And then you've got these 1,000 generations where we've been gradually indoctrinated. I mean, about everything. And I think that there's a lot of talk in the quote unquote truth movement about no matter sort of how awake any of us believe or may not believe that we are, that what will come, the big reveal, the pulling away of the curtain or the veil or whatever, will shock even the most awake out there, so to speak. And I think that you make a salient point that the more you peel back the onion, the more you realize that this is, you know, the rabbit hole, the onion, whatever, goes far, far deeper than probably any of us still suspect.
I think that one of the most difficult things as a rational human being, which I like to consider myself most times, right? We try to get all of the information that we can to make a solid decision, right? That's whether it be the smallest or the largest decisions in our lives. The situation that we're dealing with right now is we don't have all of the information. So we're trying to attempt to make these sound, rational choices of, okay, this is someone I do want to vote for. This is a side that I, do align with. But we don't have all of the information. They are hiding so much from us. And, I feel like we're in this situation where, like, we kind of know who the bad guys are, but we don't really know who the good guys are yet. Do I believe that there are still some good people in power that are trying to do the right thing? Lord, I pray, because if not, there's only so much that those of us everyday normal folk can do. So I pray that Elon is really one of the good guys that has the best of intentions for humanity. And I do think that we're going to figure that information out as time is revealed. I mean, we already have seen so much come out just in the last 3 years that we were like, ooh, but we're not all the way there yet. And that's, it's really difficult to make, informed decisions when you're only dealing with a piece of the puzzle knowledge wise and evidence wise, quite frankly.
But Courtney, don't you feel that there is part of that? And I take what you're saying, and this thing of being logical and cerebral and whatever, logic is a wonderful tool. But at the same time, what this has pushed us to do is start to become or rely a lot more on our intuitive knowing and on heart mind rather than brain mind, for want of a better phrase. So yes, on one level, it's very, very difficult that we're forced into this thing of we really don't know what the landscape is. The rug appears to have been pulled from under us. But at the same time, what that has done, I feel, for a lot of people who come onto our show as well, they will talk about this thing of trusting and going back to that much more innate knowing rather than relying on this sort of more cognitive left and right brain stuff. So I don't know how you feel about that, but you did use the word feel, that you felt about something. I think that has a lot of power. I wonder how you feel about that.
I think discernment is key at this time. And it goes back to, I've always been one that has used my intuition, my gut instinct, right? I wouldn't be here. My logical brain would have never said, hey, let's both quit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Successful careers and move to the mountains to open a taco truck, right? So that's not a logical decision by any stretch of the imagination. So we very much rely on our instincts and our discernment and the power of God, right? Like, I have to believe, and even though that I am Christian, I know that there's a lot of things within the Christian faith that I don't align with personally either. And so, but I have to be able to sleep well at night, I have to believe that there's something bigger out here in this universe that is guiding us. Do I know all the details? Am I correct about all of my assumptions in that? I don't know. But I have to believe that there's something bigger guiding us to where we are, because I probably couldn't sleep at night if I didn't, quite frankly.
Yeah. I mean, I feel we're being squeezed, a bit like Casper was saying, really, to go within some of this external stuff, let go of the noise and the knowing and just go back inside to that discernment, intuition. And there is a knowing inside, really. You've got to find that voice. There's a lot where they say, we're not learning things, we're remembering. So it's different, You've got to go within and find that. It's a lot of internal work. And it's a bit of a cliche when we talk of good guys and bad guys, that actually us uniting, that we are the ones that we've been waiting for, to actually unite and come together. And that is how we rise up out of this, I would say.
I think that there are more people awakening now more than ever in history. And I agree with you, the division of left versus right, or I'm on this side or I'm on that side, and they're going to continue to throw more of these situations at us that are going to want to keep us divided. And I think that that just shows how fast people are waking up, because they wouldn't be throwing this many different distractions on us if they knew that we weren't waking up. And I think that that's why conversations like this, you know, especially across the pond, or all of these incredible X spaces that I'm in with some very diverse group of people from all over the place, is so important, because they can't stop us from speaking anymore. That was the reign that they held over us for so long, and we felt so isolated. But that's their goal. They've always want us to feel isolated. And you felt like you were kind of just alone in this room. Like, am I the only one seeing this? Am I going? And it's easy to question your sanity too. You're like, am I the crazy one? Like, am I the problem? Is it me? I'm the problem. It's me. And then when you finally go ahead and expand your groups and your thinking and your reach, you really find out that you're not the only one like this. And many people feel this way. And I think that those of us that were early on speakers, especially in 2020, have now finally emboldened those that have been kind of sitting back. I've gotten so many messages from like previous coworkers or friends from like high school or grade school that are like, have reached out now finally, are like, hey, by the way, I kind of think that you were right. And I'm like, we were right. Come with us. So those that were kind of like shy or afraid to speak out, or just really not sure what was happening, but still questioning things in the silence, those of us that were emboldened and did take those risks to speak out early, people are finally coming to us and saying, hey, I can do this too. They did this. And I think that that's why it's so important for those of us that were early on in this awakening movement to continue to stay strong, to continue to welcome this in. We don't need to be shaming people of like, oh, well, you took this, or you sided with this, or you voted for this. No, we need to be welcoming them in, because that is how we continue to grow this movement.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think that is a great place to finish there, Courtney. I mean, I said this would go quick, and we're literally down to a minute left. So very well said. So professionally done there. So, and a great point to finish on. So we will thank you for your time and joining us today.
Yeah, and also we'll put any information in our show more description that you send across. And we'd love to have you back as well, Courtney, because we realise we've only touched, you know, on the first level of all of this, and there's so much more to cover.
Rabbit holes we could go down on this.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, for now, take care, and thank you very much for joining.
Have a lovely evening. Thanks, gentlemen.